All right, special edition, y'all, of the Outer Banks This Week podcast has brought me back to Corolla. Okay, I was just in Corolla, you all know, a few weeks ago, but now I'm back, and I'm back with Bob's Corolla Wild Horse Tours. Did I say that right?
That's pretty close, yeah.
Pretty close.
I got the point across.
Mr. Bob White sitting here with me. And Mr. Bob, how are you today?
I'm doing great. Glad to see you again. It's been a while.
It has. I know that we've done some work together in the past with some different audio pieces and whatnot. And, of course, you know, when I saw the opportunity to come back up here and hang out with you, I was like, hey, heck yeah, sign me up. Let's go.
Right.
It'd be nice if we could be recording on a horse tour right now, but I don't know that.
We can arrange that. It might be kind of tough with the equipment and sand and stuff, but
I can scale it back a little bit if I needed to.
Right.
So let's talk a little bit about the different things that you provide with Bob's Corolla Wild Horse Tours. Now, this is one of 3 different tours that you had. Talk to me a little bit about that real quick.
Sort of. So it originally started out as Bob's Wild Horse Adventure Tours.
Okay.
And, that came up by our first guest. They went out with us, and they said, hey, this is, they came up with a name, and eventually it got too cumbersome. So we just shortened it up to Bob's Wild Horse Tours, and we outgrew the location we were in.
Okay.
It started out at my dad's hotel, the Inn at Corolla Light, and as a guest amenity, and we only had limited parking there. So we started another company, Corolla Wild Horse Tours, and along the way saw a need for a Jeep rental business. So we had a Jeep rental business at one point in time, and the county decided they didn't want that anymore just because of the intrusion to the 4-drive area. They liked the idea of guided tours and not people willy-nilly all over the place in a Jeep. So we ended up with Back Beach Wild Horse Tours and converted the Jeeps over. So over the years, we've had 3, and we're scaling back now to just 2 companies.
Okay. All right. So let's talk a little bit about the history of Bob White. What got you here to Corolla and how this whole thing got started? Because it's actually a pretty neat story when I hear it. I was reading about it a little bit, and I've heard you tell it once before. Right. So who is Bob White? Let's talk about that.
All right. Well, it's funny is I'm a guy that never knew what he wanted to do.
Okay.
I ended up doing this. I went in the Marine Corps out of high school because I didn't know what I wanted to do.
Right.
Was an MP and got out from that, and meanwhile, had been married and gotten a divorce, and my dad called me up. He had just built this hotel. Said, "Hey, I need you to come down here and help me out with jet skis for the summer." So I show up down here, and we used to hold these margarita parties on the pool deck for our customers, and we're drinking out back with the customers, and they said, "Hey, how do we go see the horses?" And they had just moved the horses up to the 4-drive area. So my dad took off with my Suburban and some margaritas and did a tour. It was a little different time back then. You could get away with these things, right? There was literally hardly any houses here. The building we're sitting in had just been built, actually. This office had just been built at that time. This was actually part of the original Weeping Radish store was right here. This is part of the brewery.
God, that Uli had a branch up here. Yeah. Oh, gosh. Now you are dating yourself.
Yeah, I'm dating myself a little bit. So ended up through a complete accident and just someone asking a question, and they just happened to move the horses up there. The Corolla Wild Horse Fund had just started in 95, and they were moving the horses up there in 96. And so, boom, a business is born.
Okay.
And it was really just for the hotel guests. Never really thought much about it at the time. Hey, we're staying here. Well, great. We have this we can do for you. It's a guest amenity. And it blossomed from there.
So it started out as something that you were doing for guests that were staying at the hotel. Mm-hmm. Then next thing you know, you got people that are blowing you up, wanting you to take them out on a regular basis.
Yep, sure did.
So when you talk to me about how these tours, when people come in, they're like, they walk in the door, they've never been on one, they say, Mr. Bob, I want to get on one of your tours. How does that process take place, and how do you get them onto, and where do you go? Give me some of that.
That part's easy. Nowadays with technology, just like we're talking here, it's very simple. It's online or in person, or give us a call. Years ago, I actually had a book made every summer with, through the month, and we would write everything down by hand. And then software came along that made it possible for us to be more online and move everything. In 2020, really set that into motion. So customers book online. They come in, they're basically paid for. It's easy to do. They just check in with us, and we take them out in our tour trucks. Those have evolved greatly over the years. We started out with Suburbans back in the day. And I was out west years ago with my dad riding dirt bikes, which is another passion of mine. And I saw these trucks out there in Moab, Utah. They were doing these Outback tours out there, and took a picture of one and showed it to a guy locally and came up with the tour truck that we have now. And it just let us take more people out, get them in the open air. So we have a 15-passenger truck that's a open air safari style vehicle now that lets people be forward facing.
Okay.
And so they get to see everything basically. It's a much better view. They sit higher than the cab. You're about 9 or 10 feet at eye level riding down the beach. It's an amazing view. And so we'll take you out. It's a 2-hour tour. And we always tell people it's much more than just going to see the horses. Of course, that's the focal point of the tour. But it's, you've been up on the 4 Drive area. It is going along. There's shorebirds, there's dolphins, there's all kinds of stuff. When nesting season happens for the sea turtles, many times in the evenings, we'll be coming back on our last tour and get to watch a nest boil.
Wow.
They'll come out, boom, we stop. That tour might run a little late. Well, it's a good thing it's the last tour of the day.
Yeah.
So people get an extra treat on that tour. So it is so much more than that, because Corolla has an amazing history for being in the middle of nowhere forever.
This
place
that's right.
Was not really developed until the 80s, and really until the mid 90s when I moved down here.
I was going to say, because the road was finished coming up this way in the mid 80s, wasn't it somewhere in there? I think that's right.
About 85, 84, 85. Yeah. I came up here in 83 with my dad, and we had to come up on a sand road. And it's like, why are we here? There's no girls here.
There's no girls here.
I'm a teenager, man. Let's go to Virginia Beach. That made a lot more sense to me.
Yeah. That's great.
Fast forward, here I am,
Well, and I remember growing up. So I grew up in Wanchese. I've been, I was born in '84. So and that's home for me. And I remember the old TV 12 commercials and everything like that. And I remember when there was nobody really spoke of going to Corolla for anything. And then all of a sudden, this shopping center, which I want you to tell us where we are in just a second, but this center was developed, and I remember seeing TWs had put a spot here.
Yeah.
The Weeping Radish had put a spot here. And I remember telling myself, why are they going up there? There's nothing up there. And I was only 10 at the time, 11 years old thinking this stuff. But we are right now, it's a food line. There's a food line. It's kind of I guess we call the anchor store.
That's our anchor store, yeah.
But there's a lot of other shops here, and you're located in this center right here. It's this Food Line Shopping Center. How far are we from the 4x4 area from where we're sitting right now?
It's just a couple miles down the road.
A couple miles north of here.
Yep. So this shopping center, this was Bob DeGabriel came in and built this shopping center. It's actually called Monteray Plaza.
I knew there was a technical term for it.
There's no sign out front for it, but it's Monteray Plaza. And it was a need. Dick Brindley came up here and built Corolla Resort, and he's the guy that really moved the pavement up here, right? He said, I'm going north and put this world-class resort in, which is where our family hotel was, and where we originally started was within the resort itself. And so because of that, it moved the pavement up. And Highway 12 used to end right here at our stoplight. You had to go into Whalehead behind us into the neighborhood, drive through the neighborhood, and come out up at Shad Street 2 miles down the road, and then go into Corolla Resort. So when Bob DeGabriel decided to build this, he did Monterey Plaza, Monterey across the street, Shores, the neighborhood, and the road had to be put in to access all that. So that's what moved 12 to what you now know it to be.
Wow.
It's a pretty cool history.
It is.
And it all started in the early 80s and it finished out in the 2000s when the technology sector kind of went away when Clinton was in office. That's when it started in 97, 98, 99, 2000. That's when the building boom here took off. And, I was able to actually make a living here at that time.
Well, it is amazing to see, because I remember in high school coming up here and staying with Edward Ponton at his house, and we actually took the 4x4 all the way to the Virginia state line and went to Virginia Beach that way. Yeah, and it was one of those experiences I'll never forget. Let's rewind a little bit, get back to some of our horses. So you say it's 2 hours. You take them out there, and I'm sure that you and whomever your guides are, you talk about so many different things other than, of course, the horses, like you said, are the focal point. There's also other great, views out there with the birds and the turtles, possibly the turtles, dolphins, stuff like that. But I'm sure you also give them a little bit of like a history base for a lot of the different things around here. And that's a nice element to add, because I know a lot of times when I go places, if I do something like that, I want to hear a little bit more about the history of the area that I'm in that goes along with. So it's definitely a cool feature. Okay. Let's go ahead and just put ourselves in a situation. I've come in, I've brought my family. Bob, I want to get on. We booked online. We're booked for this time.
Right.
We get in the truck. I have an elderly mother who is wheelchair bound.
Mm-hmm.
How can she go?
It depends. We do deal with that sometimes. This is not kind of an ADA compliant tour. We don't have a wheelchair lift or anything like that. So we've had people that we have helped them get in that are ambulatory enough to climb 3 steps. Okay.
Right.
So to get on the truck, it's 3 steps.
Okay.
And you're in. We use a step ladder, but it's a little different than a regular step ladder that's, almost vertical, right? So it mimics stairs basically. So you can get up there. I've also had where we've had patrons where we put them in the front with a guide. So we use a truck, F-350, that's been modified for the tour, so we can put them in the air conditioning with a guide as well.
There you go.
If they can get in a regular car, they can get in our truck. There's nothing special about the truck itself. It's just a regular F-250. So we have that happen. I won't say frequently, but infrequently, and we accommodate our guests the best we can. And so that's that is something to consider. And we had that conversation with people. The other thing along those lines is if you're in your 3rd trimester or you have a bad back, this is not recommended for you. This is an off-road tour. So, those are things to consider, and we bring that up with our guests. And, if they show up and they didn't realize it, we just, we'll accommodate them and give them their money, but whatever we need to do.
Right,
to make them happy, and do the best we can for them to get everybody involved that we can.
There you go. All right. So, and just this is these are all hypothetical situations. My mother is not in a wheelchair. If she hears this, she's gonna be like, "Why are you telling people that I'm in one?" Mommy, I know you're not in one. Right. Okay, we're out there talking, going along, cutting up, laughing, having a good time. We see our first mini herd of horses, 2 or 3 horses. Bob, I got to jump out there and pet that thing. What happens if I do that? Should I do that? Is that allowed?
No is the easy answer. So those are harems. The stallions have harems, and they have little bitty herds, right? Mini herds, harems. And so that's pretty typical. We'll see them out on the beach, right? Before we leave the parking lot, we go over the rules of the road with you, what you can expect, how the tour is going to go, those kind of things. Each guide has their own little spiel, and they make it their own. Each guide also has different areas of interest. So they tend to gravitate towards those areas when they're speaking to their customers because it interests them, right?
Right.
And of course, we answer questions along the way. But when we stop, we don't let customers off the truck while we're out there. It's hard to get them on and off. The ladders are stable here on the pavement, but they're not out there in the sand. So unless we have an emergency, we just keep you on the truck. We'll stop, tell you the history of the horses, how they got here, those kind of things along the way. They're and history about the area, different things you're going to see, and answer questions. A lot of customers may not be from Corolla. They could be staying down in Wanchese in an Airbnb. They could be down from Hatteras Island somewhere. We have them come from Williamsburg.
Oh, wow.
So, they come from all over, make a day trip here and do this and then go back wherever. So we'll entertain questions for anything because the Outer Banks as a whole just has a cool history, right?
Oh.
Pirates, the horses span the entire Outer Banks from here to Morehead City at one point in time. There was over 6,000 of these things, they believe, roaming the Outer Banks at one point in time. Nag's Head got its name.
I was going to say Nag's Head.
It came from it, right? So there's an interesting history here, much more than Corolla. So that's why I say it's much more than a horse tour. There's a lot that goes into it.
You ain't lying about that. You just kind of spelled it out perfectly, as far as the different elements and the historic pieces of this strip of sand that we're all on. Mm-hmm. It's a wonderful thing. It's beautiful in a lot of ways. So we're out there. We've seen our horses and everything like that. You say it's a 2-hour tour. It's something I was thinking about, and these are kind of questions. This is all coming off the cuff for me. We didn't rehearse any of this.
Right.
Now, again, people come from far and wide, it seems like, to see these horses. What's like if you can remember, if you can dig into your head a little bit, the person from the most far off place that you can think of that has been on one of your tours?
Well, so it's worldwide.
Yes.
I mean, I've had people from China here. I've had French. We see French here, Germans, Spanish.
Okay.
A lot of Europeans come over. It depends on where the exchange rate is, right? When it's cheap, they'll come over.
Yeah.
When it's not, they won't.
Yeah.
So it depends on where the dollar's at. But yeah, we've seen people from all over the world come. And it's funny because we get people in here and they don't speak any English. I mean, they got enough to get by, but that's about it. So
right.
They're not getting anything from the verbal aspect of the tour, but they come back and they're all smiles. And it's such a unique experience. I mean, where else can you go? There's only a few places on the East Coast where you can go and ride on the beach, and there's sand roads, and that's what people don't understand. The houses up there's neighborhoods that were platted in the 60s, but it was never paved. So they've just kind of sporadically built on these lots up there, and that has taken off since COVID. It's picked up again. Development has here, which is another problem that is causing habitat issues.
Okay.
So the Corolla Wild Horse Fund is involved in that, and I can expound on the Corolla Wild Horse Fund a little bit if you want to delve into that.
Let's talk a little bit about that, because I'm sure there's some people that would love to know about how they can help preserve the habitats for these wild horses. Talk to me a little bit about that, because you're involved.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, the Corolla Wild Horse Fund, we are involved with them as a business, and I am as an owner. I'm on their board, but we also take donations, and we match those donations for land preservation. So the Corolla Wild Horse Fund is responsible for overseeing the herd. Now, I say oversee, that's a little bit of a misnomer. They oversee them, but they don't interfere with them. So they're left to their vices and doing whatever it is they do and being wild. They interfere with the horses when there's a problem. There's a lame horse, a really bad injury or something like that. So they'll get involved, and they have a rescue farm a sanctuary farm they take them to rehab them and care for them throughout the rest of their lives. Once they leave the beach, they don't come back. And that's because they've been gentled, they've been, gotten used to people, they're on regular foods. Their diet is so important that we not feed them anything over here. They are used to the food sources they have here, and feeding them a carrot could kill them. We've seen them die from an orange rind, or an apple or a watermelon rind.
Wow. Okay. Because I remember seeing signs and I think they may still be there coming down south on 158 through Currituck.
Yep.
Don't feed the horses. And I mean, of course, a lot of people, that's what they're like. Oh, look at the horses. Let's feed them. If they've got an apple or whatever in their lunchbox, whatever. Mm-hmm. And so you're saying that it's very important that we not do those things.
That's very important
because of the specific diets that they have on the sea oats and some of the things that are out there.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, they can eat acorns, and a domestic horse, no chance. They're not. So their diet is very specific to the region. They have evolved with this area since they've been here for 500 years. So the fund is actually, to kind of go back where we were, the fund actually is trying to buy land as it becomes available and create a corridor for the horses to have area to roam, basically, to graze on. And they're not out actively trying to buy lots and do things like that, but they are trying to buy up as things become available. If someone sells off a 10-acre parcel and they have the funds to do so, they try and buy it and put it in conservation, because not only does it benefit the horses, it's the birds, the turtles, all the other things that live off of that ecosystem.
Okay.
And they're just part of that ecosystem, right? The horses are. So that's one of the things that they do, and we're involved in, is trying to help them raise funds for that.
Okay. And now let me ask you this, with the Corolla Wild Horse Fund and everything like that, a sad side effect that I've seen, with people driving on the beach up there is I don't want to say occasionally, that's not the right word, but sometimes a vehicle and a horse will cross paths, and the vehicle seems to win.
Yeah.
The Corolla Wild Horse Fund, do y'all ever get involved with some of those things? How does that work?
No.
Okay.
Yes. So yes and no. Yes and no is probably a better answer. So at the end of the day, they're wild animals.
Right.
If you hit a deer, you hit a deer. Right. If you hit a horse, you hit a horse. It is unfortunate, and we have a higher association with horses, right? They've been part of the human history forever. So they have a special place in our heart. So these horses mean something to everyone that's ever seen them, and people that live up there. they are part of their world. And so if one gets hit by a car and killed or lamed in some way or injured, it is tragic. And so that's when the fund becomes involved. They'll go up. We'll have to bring the vet out. If the horse has to be euthanized, that may occur on site. And then, we have to take them. We may take them off the beach. And in some cases, they've taken them off and done, had necropsies done to look at the horse. And the probably the only good thing that comes out of that is that they get to look at the horse and see how it's doing health wise, otherwise in its environment, right? Test, all that kind of stuff. So, but it's a terrible thing, and we've seen more and more of that, especially over the last 4 years. The volume of people that was down here increased exponentially. And so I don't talk about the fact that I was also a local government. We talked about that before, and I was like, but one of the things I did was we instituted a parking pass system. So we saw that we had 2,000-3,000 cars a day going out there, in addition to the people that were vacationing up there, because there's vacation rental property. So we said, we're going to do 300 passes a week. So there's only 300 passes a week, and they're only for the day or for a week. We didn't do day passes, half day passes, all these other little things. And the goal was to limit the traffic, to limit the exposure, because one thing nobody thinks about, this is a state horse. It's just, and we are now involved with the state trying to, get more protections in place. And we've actually involved the state in looking at some grant opportunities to help us with purchasing land out there. So that's in the works right now in the current state budget.
But these are all positive things. I don't want anybody to think that anything like I don't like bringing up, the fact that they do get hit and sometimes they have to be euthanized because of that. But like, these are real things. And I'm glad you kind of brought that all back together, because you've been able to help in a lot of ways, create some different laws to protect them and to protect their environment and their habitats, and of course, getting it to be the state horse and everything like that that brings the state back involved with it to help really put an extra hedge of protection around it. And it's a beautiful thing. So, what would you suggest people do, or bring with them rather, when they go out on these horse tours? Can they bring stuff with them?
Yeah, we get that question a lot. Small, soft-sided horse, fine. Obviously, you want to bring sunscreen.
Yes.
Don't put it on the office, please. There's a haze of slippery stuff on the floor after you leave. But people bring a small, soft-sided cooler. It's okay to bring drinks. We just ask that there's no glass bottles. We don't care what's in the cooler. Okay, if there's adult beverages in there, it's okay. You're on vacation.
Right.
Just don't show up with the fishing cooler, though. We're not going offshore for a half day, right? There's other people on there. So we can accommodate up to 15 people. So many times, these houses will hold 15, 20 people. The whole house will come. And so you can do almost a private tour if you book the whole truck.
Oh, wow.
So, and if you do book the whole truck, you basically got a private tour. So, we see that a lot. It's there, and a lot of people will come out and they'll do the tour and then they'll go back out on the beach. So they don't know how to drive in the sand. Right, there's a lot of do's and don'ts with don't driving in the sand. You can drive out there, you just can't park out there. That's why we came up with a parking pass. So you have to, your industry folks that are out there, your electricians, contractors, so they can just go about their business without having to worry about being hassled by going out on the beach. So, so people do that as well. They'll come in and they'll do the tour, and then they know how to drive in the sand.
Okay.
So it's a different thing.
It's
a different world.
It is a lot different. Yeah. You're absolutely right about that. All right, question. I got 2 more questions for you.
Okay.
First one, I show up, I get on your truck. You are my tour guide for the day. What is could you give me your spiel right now off the cuff of like what you're going to say? I sit down, you're like, hey, I'm Bob, that sort of thing. Like, how do you go through that? I want to hear it just so people can hear it. Right. It kind of gives everybody an idea that's listening of the do's and don'ts and everything like that. So, hi, Bob. I'm here to be on your tour today. What are we doing? What's up?
All right. Well, first of all, I'm not the best tour guide.
Okay.
I'm busy running the business these days.
Right, of course.
So, but it's interesting. I did do a couple tours last year, and I hadn't done them in like 15 years. I mean, it had been a very long time for me, and it was totally enjoyable. So, the biggest thing is telling them what to expect. So when they come on, hey, I'm Bob, I'm your tour guide. By the way, I haven't done a tour in 20 years, so this could be good or bad. It's going to go either way. So, while you're out there, what to expect. When we leave here, we're going to take a few minutes to go up the beach, and then when we get out on the beach, there's a couple miles that we can't stop in. There's a wildlife reserve up there, so if the horses are in there, I'm not going to stop. We'll slow down and click a couple pictures, and then we'll go up the beach, and then I'll stop. And from there, I'll talk to you about all kinds of stuff.
Right.
The horses, how they got here, tide cycles. People ask about dune protect tides, you name it. It's a full gamut of stuff. People, beach nourishment, that's on people's minds. It happens all over the place. We've been fortunate not to have that, but there's stumps out there.
Yep.
Where did they come? Why is there stumps on the beach? Right. There was a forest here.
Yeah. Back
in the last ice age, it was about 10,000 years ago. There were trees here, and I actually have a friend of mine. His grandmother said that when they would come to the beach when they were kids, there were trees out there, and they would sit on them for shade.
No kidding.
So this would have been teens, 20s, something like that.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, you got to find pictures of that so I can show it to my guests.
That'd be killer.
If they went, they brought the camera if they had one, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
No, they haven't found them yet. So I'm still waiting, man. I'm still waiting for those pictures, but yeah.
Well,
so.
How many tours do you run a day?
It depends. So springtime, we just run 3 tours.
Okay.
We wait for it to warm up a little bit, 10 o'clock, 12:30, 3 o'clock. And then, it's getting dark earlier, so we get back. And as the sun goes down, temperatures cool off. Tide usually changes. Wind will switch and come off the ocean, and it'll get colder. That's probably one of the weirdest things we deal with is in the springtime, it's much colder on the beach than it might be standing in our parking lot. And people don't get that because you go out there and the ocean temperatures are still in the mid-50s.
That's
and
true.
You can flat freeze your tail end off out there if you're not careful. So we have to really overemphasize that. And then during the summer, when we're really busy, we start at 8 o'clock in the morning and we run 5 trips a day all the way up till 8 o'clock at night.
Okay.
We're back here about 8:15, something like that, just before sunset.
Yeah, I was going to say, you still got some daylight about that in summer.
There's a county ordinance. We're not allowed to be behind the dunes before 8 a.m. in the morning, and we're not allowed to be behind the dunes after 8 p.m. at night. And it evolved out of a meeting group out of all of us, tour companies and county staff and concerned citizens, so that you could have a cup of coffee on your deck without a horse tour riding by.
Yeah.
And you could sit on your deck in the evening without a horse tour riding by. And it makes sense, right? You want to be able to enjoy your life here, and I get that. So, it was a good thing to put in place.
There it is. Well, Mr. Bob, I feel like we've kind of gone through the
run the gambit.
Yeah, we run the gambit. I couldn't think of the word for a second.
Right.
Of everything. Where can they find you online?
Well, you can just type in Bob's Wild Horse Tours. I'm going to come up. The physical address is CorollaWildHorseTours.com.
Okay.
It's simple, but my name is the easiest way. And, I've been trying to get rid of my name because one day I won't have this business, right? Someone else will. I'll be tired of it. And I don't know if I want my name associated with it if it's not me. When you come into the office, my wife, Wendy, and I are here. You're going to see us. You're going to meet the owners. And that's probably different than any other tour company out here. Well, we are still involved day to day, every day.
Amen. That's beautiful. Beautiful. Yep. Hands-on. And that says a lot and speaks a lot to the business itself and how you operate. So, I mean, that's a wonderful thing. So, well, Mr. Bob, like I said, I think, like you said, we run the gambit of it. Is there anything else we left out that you wanted to make sure you said?
No, not at all. I think we've covered it. It's a great family thing. We have people come back year after year after year. And I always thought it would be one and done. And people, we went last year. I have people that come back 3 or 4 times during the summer.
Well,
it's crazy.
And you think about it, in a lot of ways, that's the goal, in my opinion.
Repeat business.
You want people, when they leave here from their vacation, they go home, their friends that are coming the next week, you want them going back and being like, look, you make sure you go to Bob's Wild Horse Tours. One of the first things you need to do is you need to do that when you go back down there.
We do hear that.
And I was going to say, and it sounds to me like you've done it.
Yeah, we do that. Yep.
That's where that repeat keeps coming. And I mean, they're telling their friends and they're coming back and they're booking with you. And it's a beautiful thing.
Yep.
Well, Mr. Bob, I appreciate you giving me a few moments, a special edition of the Outer Banks This Week podcast for Bob's Wild Horse Tours here in beautiful Corolla. I thank you again, sir.
Thank you. Enjoyed it.